Immigration currently is being debated on the floor of the House and the Senate, and there's a great deal of hotly contested issues with regard to the immigration situation. What are your positions and your ideas about reforming our immigration laws, and also what to do about the illegal immigrants currently in this country?
You guys have been lied to all these for decades now. They make up stories about why they're opposed to immigration. They call it economic. There's only one reason to oppose immigration, and you and I all know what it is, and that is race. That is the only reason these people are opposed to immigration. You have to recognize the parallel between the bell curve, which showed that an individual who has a high IQ is going to be prosperous and productive in his life. If you have a group of individuals, as shown by Richard Lynn, I wasn't allowed to bring any books, Richard Lynn's book, IQ and the Wealth of Nations, it shows that just as there is a correlation between the individual and his ability, shown by the bell curve, in IQ and the Wealth of the Nation by Richard Lynn, there is a correlation between the IQ, the average IQ of a group, and the productive capacity of that group. The reason that the people oppose immigration is because they believe, and it's true, that the less favored races, which have a lower IQ on average, which have a smaller brain on average, cannot maintain the level of civilization which the more favored races have created. The races are absolutely not equal. The subtitle of Darwin Origin of Species, which has been censored, is on the origin of species by means of natural selection or the preservation of favored races in the struggle for life. You can look at the book, I've got an uncensored copy. The less favored races of sub-Saharan Africa, which Hollywood calls black, have an average IQ of 70 to 75, a brain size 5 years smaller than the more favored races of Europe. They never even invented a wheel. If we had integrated with these less favored races thousands of years ago, the evolutionary process would have been short-circuited. We never would have developed the sufficient brain size or IQ to invent electric light or an automobile or an airplane. And they tell us now that we should immigrate, that we should allow immigration of these less favored races here, which, if it had happened 1,000 years ago or 10,000 or 20,000 years ago, would have prevented the development of a high enough IQ and a large enough brain. There never would have been an electric light. There never would have been an automobile. There never would have been an airplane. And even looking at common sense, if you look at the Mexican immigrants as just where they came from and what they are, people say, oh, the Mexicans are good workers. They'll add to our economy. What did they add to the Mexican economy? Poverty, crime. They're going to add the same thing here. They're going to make our country the same disaster they made their own. And as I mentioned earlier, look at what has already happened to our inner cities, where the less favored races of one, like Detroit used to be a metropolitan, the center of industry, the motor city. Now it looks like a bombed out slum. And every one of you knows the reason for it. It wasn't struck by Hurricane Katrina. It's because the less favored races took over that city. They have a small brain, a low IQ, and they cannot maintain. If we don't stop immigration and welfare, this country is going to look like one big Detroit, and every one of you knows it, and it's time for you to start voting what you know is the truth for your children and for the future of our civilization and our country. Thank you.